What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks. Today's guest, person in recovery, Jocelyn Stockwell from Estevan, Saskatchewan, is here to share her incredible journey from homelessness and addicted to healing and thriving. We are going to meet her right after this.
I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years, I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knox Talks.
Okay, before we bring in Jocelyn, I just want to let you know that today's live production is brought to you in part by Prairie Sky Recovery Centre, the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, and Stronger Together Canada peer-led support groups by Moms Stop the Harm. To learn more about our sponsors, check out our upcoming live streams, get on our weekly email list to stay up to date, and much more, visit www.hardknoxtalks.com. Let's bring in Jocelyn. Hey, Jocelyn, how are you?
Hi, good to be here.
Mm-hmm. What a whirlwind it was that came screaming into your life like a wrecking ball last night. You're like, oh, I need a guest.
It
So
was good. Less time to stress about it.
fair enough. Fair enough. I know
Yeah.
us people that have struggled with substances do that thing where worrying is 90% of the problem.
Oh yeah, overthinking. I'm so bad for that.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you would like to say before we jump in?
Uh, well, I'm really grateful to be here, and I love the fact that a platform like this exists because I feel like by sharing our stories with each other and with, the rest of the world that we can make change happen.
Mhm. Well said. Well, let's jump in. Okay. Well, why don't you start at the beginning? Um, Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up.
Okay. I had a really good childhood. Both of my parents loved me and my siblings very much. I don't have any bad memories from childhood. We did move around quite a bit, so there was a little bit of a lack of stability there, but we always had each other. I have a brother who's a year younger than me and a sister who's 8 years younger than me. And, we were all very close growing up, and we it was just a good childhood. I have nothing but good memories. I think things started to get a little bit unstable when I was about 10 years old. Uh, we had been moving around a whole bunch, and my dad had struggled a little bit with his mental health, and he and my mom got divorced when I was 10, and that was pretty hard on me.
So how come you moved
My
around so much?
brother my dad was moving for work. He's a physician, so he would get a job here, and then so we'd move all the way across the country, and then he'd get a job. Like we ended up in Kingston, Ontario, from Saskatoon originally, and then we ended up on Vancouver Island, and then Kelowna, and then back Saskatoon. Just moving all the time with work.
And was there any drinking at home?
No, no. both of my parents, they grew up with parents who were alcoholic, and they made a commitment to each other that they wouldn't drink in front of us. And like, I don't remember really any times like, you know, either of them have been drunk. I think I've probably seen each of them drunk maybe one time in my life. So they really kept that away from us and they didn't expose us to that.
Hmm. So you mentioned that your dad had a bout of depression. Was that an ongoing thing with him, or did it just surface one day?
Well, I'm sure he's struggled with it for quite a few years. I would have been too young to, see any of the signs of it or anything like that. I just
Hmm.
know that when I was about 10 years old, his depression got quite bad. I know that he went to treatment for it.
Hmm.
And then when he got back, that's when I found out that my parents were getting divorced. So, yeah.
And what did that did that start you down a path at that point, or like how old were you the first time you got loaded?
I would have been, I think, 13. It
Mhm.
was New Year's Eve, Y2K. So I remember we were at a block party. Like all of the families on the block were having a party, and my mom was drinking raspberry daiquiris, I think. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, hey, let me try. And it was really good, and it made me feel really good. So I snuck some more, and I just remember just feeling lightheaded and floaty and like, this is great. And I did not feel so great the next morning.
Uh-huh.
But I think that was my first exposure to alcohol.
Did your mom
I didn't
know?
really drink throughout high school. I think she knew that I was
So
drinking.
so when
I
you
don't know
woke
if
up
she
in the
knew how drunk
morning,
I was.
when you woke up in the morning, was she like, uh-huh?
Oh, probably not. I probably hit it, but
Mm.
it was an awful feeling, and I didn't really make the connection that it was the drinking that did it because I was so young. But yeah.
Yeah. So how was high school? Did you oh, your mom your mom's chiming in. She's like, I knew. Thanks for being here, mom. I'm
That's
assuming
awesome.
that's mom. Got the same
Oh
last
yeah,
name.
yeah,
Yeah. So, anyways, that's awesome. Did you make
yeah.
friends easy in school?
Um, Not really. I was a pretty introverted kid, like relatively shy. I did have a group, like a core group of friends in high school, but I wasn't super social
Mhm.
outside of my group of friends. I mean, I spent lots and lots of time with my group of friends, and like we didn't really drink or party or anything like that. Like we just, I was really into dancing at the time, so I spent a lot of time dancing, and I didn't really have time to drink or do drugs or anything like that. Um, I mean, I did act out a bit. There was a few incidences, like I think I got drunk twice or three times in high school, and I got high twice in high school. One time turned out very, very badly. I ended up sneaking out of my dad's house in the middle of the night and, causing them to worry like freaking crazy. And I just got in a ton of trouble for that. So after that, I just didn't see it worth it. I knew I was going to get in tons of trouble if I did drugs or got high, so I just didn't.
Mhm. So, so that was a factor for you then. Consequences still mattered at this point. You're like, I don't want to like. So was it that you'd get in trouble, or that you would go down a path that kept you away from it?
Uh, it was it was definitely I would get in trouble. I think throughout my whole addiction, I kind of had it in my head like I can outsmart addiction. It'll never
Mm.
happen to me, that sort of thing. So,
Mhm.
like I never really thought like, I'll end up down that path because like to me, I don't know why that ego or arrogance or something like that, but I didn't think that it would ever happen to me.
Mm. So did you graduate?
I did, yep. I graduated with a really high average. I was on the honor roll. I got direct acceptance into the College of Engineering at the U of S, and I was really excited. I was, I thought I had my whole life planned out in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to be an engineer, and things were going to be great. And yeah, so I I moved out of my parents' place while I was in first year university, and I was living by myself. And being in the College of Engineering, I mean, there's quite a drinking culture in university as it is, but that college had quite a drinking culture. And I was a Ukrainian dancer at the time as well. So, like, two things I was really, really into where there was a little bit of a drinking culture involved. And, me with lots of social anxiety and stuff like that, feeling really awkward around people.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this is great. Alcohol makes me feel wonderful. I feel outgoing. I can be the person I want to be sober. And it was great. I loved it. I partied all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I drank my way through my first 2 years of university. And after the third year, they basically said, like, you need to withdraw from the college because my grades weren't good because I was drunk all the time.
Yeah.
So I got myself kicked out of university in my first degree just because I got carried away with the drinking and the partying.
Yeah. So when we talked though, you said that you were doing a PhD in neuroscience. Was that during this time?
No, so after I left the College of Engineering, I took 2 years off and I just worked.
Tell us about those.
And then
Hang
I
on a
went
sec.
back.
Hang on a sec. Hang on a sec. Tell us about
Okay.
those 2 years. If you got punted for was it for behavior or was it just for performance?
For performance, my grades were just not very good.
So how did you take that when you got that letter? Like,
Um, I mean, I blamed other people or other situations. I really didn't accept the responsibility for the problem myself.
mm,
Um, I was quite ashamed of it. I hid it, and I think probably during those 2 years off, that's when my drinking got bad. Like, I started drinking alone every
mm,
evening, just going through crazy amounts of alcohol, and I just started isolating myself. Like, before that, I was quite social, but after that, like, the drinking became very solitary and very isolated.
yeah. Got a comment coming in here from our friend Kelsey. Thank you for the comment, Kelsey. Kelsey says your story of drinking in university to help calm social anxiety is a lot of people's story. How fine of a line that is for so many of us.
Oh, so true.
Yeah.
So true.
So then you
Yeah.
ended up back in university. So how did you land on neuroscience? Like you went from engineering and now neuroscience.
Yeah. So I went back to university to, my initial plan was to go into medicine. And so I needed to get an undergraduate degree for that. So I went
Mhm.
in and I got a physiology and pharmacology honors degree. And so my last year, I got to do an honors project and I got into research. And as soon as I started, I knew, like, that's where I want to be. I loved research. And my supervisor for my honors project was able to give me the opportunity to get a master's degree in 1 year after I finished my undergraduate degree. So, I mean, that's such a great opportunity. Why wouldn't I?
Mhm.
So I went and got my master's degree, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I was like, well, I might as well get a PhD. So I started working on my PhD right after that as well.
And then things got pretty dark uh, pretty quick. You ended up,
Yeah.
I think a relationship ended, correct?
Yes. So I was a few years into my PhD. I was at least 4 or 5 years into my PhD. So I've been working very, very hard for quite some time. I passed my comprehensive exam. Really, I was like at the tail end of my degree, and I I was in a relationship and it broke up. And looking back on it, I can see it broke up because he couldn't handle my drinking. I was just a miserable drunk. I would be at home, if I wasn't at work that day, I'd be
Mhm.
drunk by noon every day. I would always tell myself, at night, like, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink. And then I'd be 3 drinks in before realizing it. So it was probably very, very hard on him. And I think at a certain point, he couldn't deal with it. Um, in my mind at the time, I didn't see that. I was like, oh, how could this happen? And I was just having a pity party and totally blindsided. Like, I didn't see my own behavior. I
Mhm.
just I was blown away. So that sent me into a really dark place with my mental health. I got really depressed. I isolated myself, and I did sort of slow down on the drinking. I think the night that we broke up, I drank a 2-6 of Crown Royal, and after that, the
Oof.
hangover was so terrible. I was like, this needs to stop. This just needs to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so about 3 months after that breakup, I went seeking drugs. So during my master's degree, I had done a few drugs. Like I did cocaine a little bit. I did a little bit of like MDMA. I smoked a lot of weed when I was doing my master's degree. Um, so I mean, I wasn't unfamiliar with drugs,
Yeah.
but I just wasn't really prepared for what came next.
Yeah.
I went seeking out drugs. I started doing meth, and that was really when things started to go downhill.
So help us understand, if we can, um, how somebody, goes from drinking and earning a PhD and like doing all of the, like, you know earning a PhD is really hard. How do you, like, did you just wake up one morning and you're like, I'm gonna go seek drugs, and like, how did that thought just pop into your head? Do you remember the moment where it was like, I'm gonna go and do this?
Ah, well, sort of. I remember the way that I sought them out is I was on a dating site, and I looked at somebody's profile and I saw him and I was just like, oh, this guy's got drugs. So I messaged him
Yeah.
and we
And
met
did he?
up, and oh yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
yes.
Um, and he was open about the fact that he did meth, and I he didn't want to give me my first dose. I mean, like who wants to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when he asked me, he's like, "Have you ever done this before?" And I was like, "Of course. I've done it
Oh
all the time
yeah.
because yeah, oh, it
That's all
can't
you
be that
got.
bad." Yeah. So so yeah, I remember that, and from that point, I mean, I was hooked. It made me feel great. I loved the way that it made me feel initially. Um, but it drove my life down super, super quickly. I think within 6 months of starting to do it, I had to go on medical leave from school just because I wasn't there anymore. I wasn't showing up. And when I was there, I was just like all over the place. I wasn't getting any work done, and I just wasn't focused anymore. And then within another 3 months after that, I was homeless and I'd lost absolutely everything. So, I mean, like, it was a really, really quick 9 month progression. And it was really strange because being on meth, it's like I didn't care. I watched my entire life crumble around me and I just didn't care because I had the meth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my life just became pure and utter chaos after that. My family caught on relatively quickly, and my dad and stepmom basically gave me an ultimatum that like if I wanted to continue to have a relationship with them, I need to go to treatment.
Yeah.
And so this was in 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to Edgewood in Nanaimo in 2019, did a 50-day program. That was kind of my first like real introduction to the 12-step programs.
So tell us, just when your parents sat you down and said, if you want to continue a relationship with us, you have to do this. Like, what went through your head? Were you angry with them, or were you like, was that like a check-in point for you?
I was really angry. I
Yeah.
was, I just kept saying over and over in my head, like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And
But you
I mean,
weren't
I wasn't.
saying, but you weren't saying, I'm not addicted. You were saying, I'm not ready to get help. So you knew that,
Yeah.
you were aware that this was a problem.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
knew I couldn't stop. And
Yeah.
I knew like the 12 years before that I'd been drinking, I knew I was alcoholic, and that was, like I just transferred my addiction from alcohol to meth at that point.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, I did the 50-day program at Edgewood. I got back. I didn't have a home to go back to. I moved in with my boyfriend into a trap house, which was not a very good idea. Uh, Actually, it was a really stupid idea. So I immediately went back to the world that I just left, and I relapsed within about like 3 hours of getting off the plane, which was, you know, I was planning my relapse while I was in treatment. So not surprising looking back at it, but still kind of unfortunate.
Mhm.
Um, it was a really, really bad explosive relapse. From that point forward, I ended up on the streets for 2 years.
Mhm.
And it was awful. I mean, sometimes we'd be able to couch surf, sometimes we'd be able to scrape enough money together to like stay in a hotel for a little bit. But I mean, in reality, we were stuck on the streets, my boyfriend and I,
Mhm.
and it was awful. I mean, there's a lot of like PTSD I have associated with some of the things that happened to me there.
Yeah.
Getting involved with like gang activity and, having people hold you hostage at gunpoint, having people threaten you with like machetes, getting beaten up a few times. Like it was a really, really harsh world, and it was something I wasn't prepared for.
So were you ever
Um,
a gang member?
no, no, no.
Mhm.
I did know quite a few gang members, but that's something I was never willing to do. And actually, most of the people I knew who were gang members also felt that same way about me. A lot of people would say, like, you don't belong in this world. Like, you need to
Yeah.
get out. And, you know, even the other addicts saw that I needed to get out, but I was just so caught up in it and like in denial about it. And like, even though things were terrible, I would still tell myself, like, this is fine. I'm happy. This is great. Just
Yeah.
such a delusion, you know? My life was a total dumpster fire. And about a year after we started like living on the streets, I started doing fentanyl as well. And that's when things got really, really bad. Um,
Yeah.
I I just, there was no motivation to do anything better. And when you're addicted to fentanyl, you're so, so dependent on it. Like your entire life becomes devoted to not going into withdrawal. And you'll do things that you're not proud of. You'll, sell yourself. You'll do all sorts of things just to make sure that you didn't go into withdrawal. And that was a really, really, really dark time in my life. Um,
So
I
what
I
finally like what finally did it for you?
well, I overdosed twice,
Mhm.
and that definitely didn't help. At the point though, I hated my life so much. Like I remember the first time I overdosed, I uh, I actually had a spiteful thought against my boyfriend just because he had overdosed in front of me so many times, and he was really worked up. And I remember looking at him and be like, "Now you know what it's like," which is not a good response to that, uh,
You're like
right?
going down and you're
Like
like, now you know what that's like.
yeah, exactly. And the stupid thing is I actually started doing fentanyl to spite him because I
Mm,
was sick of watching him overdose all the time. So I was like, let's show him what this is like. And I hated
yeah,
fentanyl from the day I started doing it, and I still kept doing it.
yeah,
Um, and I remember the second time I overdosed, I came back and I was just like, ugh, why did you save me? I just didn't want to keep living like that anymore. It was awful.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, about March last year, Wendy, who's a very, very good family friend and been a
Yeah.
huge support to me for my whole recovery journey, she got a hold of me and she was like, I think I can get you into the treatment center in Estevan, but you have to promise me you'll actually go if I get you in.
Mhm.
And that was like the first time I felt hope in like 2 years. It was great. I was like, oh, yes, 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 please, please get me in. And it took a few weeks, but she did eventually message me and she's like, okay, you're in. You need to get to Estevan by Friday.
Mhm.
And that was like the best feeling. I was so, so happy that it was finally going to be over.
Mhm.
That was a Monday she got a hold of me. So basically, I had 5 days to try to get to Estevan. It didn't quite work out very well. The day before I was supposed to go to Estevan. I had a bunch of things that I had to do, and Wendy lent me one of her vehicles to go do it. And as soon as I was in the vehicle, it's like the first time I felt safe in a very long time. So I just like passed right out, and I was asleep for like 24 hours, almost unresponsive.
Mhm.
And like she was trying to figure out what was going on with her vehicle, and I wasn't answering. So she phoned the police, and she's like, I don't know if I have to report this as a theft or what, but like, I don't know where this vehicle is. I lent it to someone, and uh, they did eventually find us. My boyfriend and his friend were, driving around in it and stuff, and I was just passed out in the back seat. Um, the police came and they sort of like, got them to leave the vehicle, and I just remember being wheeled into an ambulance, and like I was delirious. I was almost unresponsive. Like I don't know what exactly was going on. I know I did wake up to get high quite a few times during that 24 hours, but I was just so out of it. So by the time I'd been like wheeled into the ambulance, the ride I was supposed to have to Saskatoon was already supposed to leave, and it was actually my sister-in-law, and she was kind of not happy with me for that whole
Yeah.
incident. So they were a little bit angry. So I didn't end up getting to Estevan that day. I think it took me another 5 days to get there. Um, and I mean, I'm super, super grateful. My father-in-law was able to drive me to Estevan the following Wednesday. So that would have been April 21st of last year was when I finally arrived at the hospital.
So when question that came to mind, when your parents put you into treatment, you were angry, right? So
Hmm.
was it the lived experience that you gained during your second stint out there that was like, yes, now I'm ready? Or was it because somebody else other than your parents said I can help you?
Um, it was definitely the experience.
Yeah.
Like, I I don't know what it was before. Like, I was just so arrogant. Like, I thought that I could outsmart, I'm a neuroscientist. I know how
Hmm.
addiction works, so therefore I can outsmart it. Like, it
Hmm.
was just,
Let's go do meth.
that, yeah, exactly. That
Yeah.
stupid, like, stupid addict logic that, like, just
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense when you look at it. But in my mind at the time, it made perfect sense.
Hmm.
Uh, but that 2 years on the street was awful. I never ever want to go back there. And it was enough to motivate me that like I knew this was my last chance. I knew that I wasn't going to survive on the streets very long if I didn't go to treatment when I did.
Hmm.
Um, when I did get to treatment, I was in the process of dying. Like I couldn't even hold myself up. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't hold my own head up. I hadn't slept in a very long time. I hadn't showered in at least 2 weeks. I was super, super thin. Like I was probably like 92, 93 pounds or something like that.
Hmm.
And I just looked like death. And I got to the treatment center and they tested me for COVID and I tested positive for COVID.
Hmm.
And so they came and told me that, and they told me, we're not sure if we're going to be able to keep you. You might have to go home for 10 days and then come back after you've isolated for 10 days. And that was when I felt like that desperation. I was like, oh my goodness, please don't make me go back out there.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have survived another week out there. It was really bad. So they managed to find a room in the ICU that they could stick me in for a 10-day isolation. And it was like completely isolated. I sat there alone for that whole isolation. And it was good because I really needed to rest. I probably slept for about 5 days straight. And
Hmm.
I just remember feeling safe for the first time in so, so long, feeling absolutely safe. And it was such a nice feeling.
Yeah. So you had an experience when you came out of isolation. You went to a support group.
Hmm.
Was that AA or was that something different?
Um, well, it was so in the treatment center, the one here, St. Joseph's at us in Estevan. Every morning, the patients get together and we'll read like the daily reflection or the just for today. So either the AA or the any daily reading book, and go around the circle and talk about like what the reading meant to us.
Mhm.
And I remember while we were going around talking about it, as it was getting closer to me, I just remember thinking to myself over and over again, oh, I'm so broken. I'm so broken. And when it finally got to be my turn to share, I couldn't hold in the emotion anymore. I just started crying. And I just remember saying how grateful I was to be there and how grateful I was that it was finally over. Um, that was a really, really important. moment in my recovery, I think.
Mm.
If I've ever had moments where I've questioned, like, is this what I want? I just remember back to that moment about how happy I was to finally be sober and be somewhere safe and not have to worry about that life anymore.
Is there anything that because there's advocates out there, and rightfully so, that are advocating and saying things like, today's rock bottom isn't what it used to be. People say you need to hit rock bottom before you'll find recovery, and oftentimes today rock bottom is death. Is there
Hmm.
anything, looking back now, that your family or your friends or anybody could have done to have raised that bottom for you so that you didn't need to go down to those depths to find what you found?
Honestly, probably not. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've I was such a stubborn, headstrong, like, and it was like a serial, like a contrarian, like almost like I would always do the opposite of what anyone told me. Somebody would be like, don't do this, and I'd be like, oh, well, I'm just going to go do that, even if it caused me
Mm-hmm.
harm. I just had issues with authority. I didn't want to be told what to do. All of these things, and like people were telling me, they're like, Jocelyn, you're going down this road, you're going to end up dying. And I wouldn't listen. Like I needed to see it for myself. I was just so
Mm-hmm.
headstrong and stubborn. Um, and I mean, it's really sad because so many people tried to warn me, so many people tried to
Yeah.
help me, and I was just so closed off to it.
Tell us a little bit about treatment. In my experience, I didn't want to be there when I got there, and when it was time to leave, I didn't want to leave. Was that your experience?
Um, well, I definitely wanted to be there when I got
Mm-hmm.
there. I mean, I had a moment of cold feet the day that I arrived, but I was happy to be there. And absolutely, I loved it there. It's such a great program. And it truly saved my life. I learned a lot about myself, about addiction, about recovery. Um, and it was such a safe place. And by the time it came time for me to leave, I didn't really want to go. I was like, I could stay here for a bit longer. Um, I was there
Yeah.
for 76 days. So I was there for 2.5 months, but like I could have stayed for longer.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get into that little bubble, right? You get this new way to live, and it's so new and it's so shiny and healthy, and it's like your little recovery bubble. And for me, it was, yeah, it was like
Hmm.
I didn't want to leave. Like I thought I did, but you walk outside and you're back in the real world. Tell us a little bit about that. What was it like going back into the real world? Like, did you have supports in place? Did your family help you, or what did that look like for you?
I had a lot of support coming out of treatment. I'm originally from Saskatoon,
Mm-hmm.
so given everything that happened to me in Saskatoon, I knew that going back there would be a very, very bad idea. So I stayed in Estevan. I went into the sober living here in town, and I think that was an essential step for me just to help integrate me back um, into normal society again, while still, excuse me, having that support from the treatment center. It was an amazing step for me, and it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. Um, I was definitely nervous when I got out of treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to every single meeting I could possibly go to. I think I was going to about 10 meetings a week. Um, I I just dove right into recovery. I didn't get a job right away. I just, knew I needed to focus on my recovery. I started seeing a counselor. I did everything I possibly could to maintain my recovery and make it become a habit, because the alternative was death, and
Yeah.
I wanted to live. So I just that was my motivation, is I knew that a relapse is going to be the death of me. So,
So you
you
mentioned
know.
just now, and maybe correct me if I heard you wrong. Um, you mentioned that the support of the treatment center was an important part. Now, So were
Hmm.
you involved with an aftercare program through the treatment center? Or were you just able to
Yes,
call them and
absolutely.
check in? Or tell us about that.
Um, well, I mean, they do run the sober living. So there was that sort of aftercare through that, but they have lots and lots of support for patients getting out of treatment. There's uh, group therapy on Zoom 3 or 4 times a week. There's 12-step meetings on Zoom. There's like, you can call and talk to your counselor at the treatment center anytime. I actually talked to my counselor yesterday briefly. So, and I mean, I almost left about a year ago. I got out of there July 6th last year, and I still keep in touch with them because, not only have they been such an important and pivotal, you know, thing in my life, but
Mhm.
like, I know sometimes we just need support and sometimes we just need reminders of like,
Yeah.
you know, what we learned in treatment and it's great. They have such good aftercare for the treatment
Did
center for sure.
did they was it a 12-step model?
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, they didn't just specifically focus on 12 step. There was a lot of, group therapy and personal therapy, and we worked on assignments and, like it was tailored to each patient. Like what I did wouldn't look anything like what somebody else did. Like it was tailored to like the things that were holding us back in life. So for example, I had to work on my codependency. I'm a very
Mm.
codependent person.
Mhm.
Um, that was one of the things that was a big issue with me, especially since my boyfriend, now fiance, was going into treatment after I left, and we were both in active addiction. After he got out of treatment, I mean, we were both in early recovery. That was a big thing, and we had to work really hard on keeping our recoveries separate while still supporting each other because, we'd been so enmeshed with each other for so long on the
Yeah.
streets that like it was a tough thing and it was a really important thing. So I mean that's something I worked on quite hard with my or while I was in treatment.
Yeah. Did anyone ever discourage you from getting back together with your now fiance? Like when you first came out, were people like, you guys should stay away from each other?
Um, no.
Mhm.
But also, so when I got out of treatment, there was about a week where I was out and he was still out in active addiction. And so he was all the way in Saskatoon and I was here in Estevan. So like we were 5.5 hours apart, but I knew that seeing him was going to be a bad plan. So the day that he arrived at treatment, I had talked with one of the guy who does the admissions and stuff at the treatment center, and he told me he's just like under no uncertain terms do I want to see you there the day he arrives. And I was like, I get that because I know he's going to be high and I don't know how I'm going to react to it. I was only 2.5 months sober at that point, and you know, he was probably going to have drugs on him. How was I going to react to seeing my drug of choice right there?
Mhm.
So I didn't see him until after he got out of treatment, which was, I mean, he was there for about 2 months. So there was about a 5 month period where like we didn't see each other, like we just talked on the phone. And that was tough, but we also knew how essential it was for us to be healthy before we got back together. So
Yeah.
they never discouraged us being together, but they definitely discouraged us seeing each other while he was still using.
Yeah. Got a comment coming in here. Mary, thanks for the comment, and it's good to see you. Mary says, there's nothing like spending time online with your peers. Online treatment program worked for me. I'm in aftercare Zooms too. Hard Knox Talks is part of that too. Mary, thank you so much for saying that. We really appreciate that. We're bringing some value to your program. So okay, so you're out. Um, do you dive into meetings right away? Like, do you get a sponsor? Do you start working the steps? What did your involvement with the program look like?
I dove in head first. I,
Mhm.
I started going to 10 meetings a week, like as soon as I got out of treatment. There was a gap in town here where there was no meeting on Tuesday nights. So a few of my friends from the treatment center were like, let's start our own NA group. So we started our own NA group, and there was a lot of involvement with that, and I'm still I serve as the secretary for that group, so I'm still quite involved with that group. And I did as much as I could with recovery. I got to know everyone I could in town and develop a support network. I started, doing everything I could in the program. I started working the steps. I started working with a sponsor. Which was a little bit tough. It was hard to find a sponsor because there are so few women
Hmm.
in Estevan with significant clean time. But I did find one, and yeah, we started working the steps. And it was absolutely enlightening. Like when I worked step 1 through 5 when I was at Edgewood back in 2019, and I thought I did a good job and I thought I was thorough, but it was really, really on the surface. Like I didn't really put in that much effort. And this time around, I just everything that came to mind, I wrote down. I put what I could. I'll put all the energy I could into my steps.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the motivation was there. I mean, again, knowing that a relapse is going to be my death
Yeah.
is something that keeps me pushing forward. I don't want to die. I've got stuff to do,
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
life to live still.
Yeah. So, like, what kind of sponsor worked for you? Now, there's different people and different, modalities work for different people. Now, me, I needed my ass kicked. I was the guy that was like, I needed someone to say, sit down, shut up, write this, do this. How was your sponsor with you?
Um, my sponsor, she was very, very supportive. We would go for coffee. We would like she was really good at like gently giving me things. And I mean, I'm
Hmm.
surprised because I initially thought like I probably need somebody to kick my ass too, but I was just so motivated to stay in the program as it was that I didn't necessarily need that ass kicking. I more so needed just I needed to know that I had somebody there to support me whenever I was struggling, and she was really great for that.
Yeah.
Um, I have since changed sponsors, even though like she's a wonderful sponsor. There was just a little bit of trauma associated with like being on the streets and stuff like that, and I just felt like I couldn't relate to her. But that I mean that only happened a few months ago. Up until then, I mean she was a wonderful, wonderful sponsor, and I'm
Mhm.
really, really grateful that I had her.
Yeah. Yeah. I went through a few myself.
Hmm.
So when we spoke earlier today, you mentioned that you went through your life largely atheist. Tell us
Hmm.
about coming to find a higher power and coming to that acceptance and what that higher power looks like to you.
That was a really, really tough thing for me. And it was definitely one of the things that was missing when I went to treatment in 2019.
Mhm.
I I'd spent my whole life being atheist. I was really close-minded and tolerant, like there's no God, no questions. I know the truth. I know better than everyone else.
Yeah.
Um, there's that arrogance coming back, and I was really, really intolerant of people. Like I looked down on people who believed in God, which like looking back on it, that's crazy. So I didn't really, when I went to treatment in 2019, I didn't have a higher power. I couldn't even fathom what a higher power would look like.
Mhm.
Um, but by the time I got to treatment last year, I was just so beaten down. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I just, there had to be more. And like, there's some things that happen, with like dying and stuff that really make you rethink, or not dying, but like overdosing, right? Like stop
Yeah.
breathing and all that stuff. Like basically, if they hadn't have saved me with Narcan, I'd have been dead. Um, it really makes you think a lot about that. And, even just the first step for me was accepting like there's way more to this world that we could not possibly even understand. So I'm being arrogant just by thinking I know the truth about everything.
Yeah.
Um, And step two, like, came to believe that a power greater than me could restore me to sanity. It all came the day I arrived at treatment last year. I remember just, being so frail and like pathetic in that wheelchair. and then wheeling me up to the ICU. And I just remember looking over, and like the hospital in Estevan is it's called St. Joseph's. It's a Catholic hospital, and so they had a big statue of Jesus. And I remember looking over at it as I'm waiting for the elevator to go upstairs in my wheelchair, and I don't even think I had the strength to say it out loud, but I was just like, please help me. And that was like the moment where I finally came to believe that there was something more that could help me.
Hmm.
Um, I'm so grateful that I finally got there. Um, it's been quite a journey. Like I've been exploring my spirituality in lots of ways since I've been in recovery. I mean, I've joined a meditation group that we meet once a week. I go to church. Today I would call myself Christian.
Hmm.
I was baptized over Easter weekend actually, which was really, really cool. I'm really grateful that I did that. And I found my higher power, and I call my higher power God. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't necessarily have to, but that's what I call him. And I'm so grateful that I got there. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so, I mean, coming to believe and then actually surrendering my will took a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Uh, I I had to work quite hard at it. I was, always very self-sufficient, always very stubborn, always thinking like I can do this myself. It actually took until step 6 to realize that I'd spent my whole life trying to be God.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that realization, I was just like, oh, okay, this all makes sense. But when I was working through step 2 and 3, I surrendering my will was tough.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's been times I take my will back all the time. Even now,
Yeah,
I
that's not
catch
just like
myself
a it's
doing
not
it.
like a one-time event, is it? It's like I have now surrendered my
Oh no,
will. On to step 4 we go.
yeah. And I mean, even silly things like yesterday, I texted my sponsor, and I'm just like, I have just talked myself, I've overthought myself into like insanity. Like I had to make 2 phone calls, and I'd spent 3 days making assumptions about how these phone calls were going to go. And I caused myself to get all stressed out about it. And she phoned me, and she's just like, I think you're overthinking this. I think you just need to make the phone calls. Like again, just taking my will back and
Mhm.
thinking that like I know what's going to happen, or that I can control what's going to happen. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I
The
can't.
audacity. The audacity.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
exactly.
You're talking about step one being the point where you started to realize that you were trying to think as though you were God. That came to me in step 2, and it's interesting because you come to believe that there's a power greater than yourself. Uh, to do that, you have to start to believe that that greater power isn't you. you know, and
Yeah.
yeah, and when someone explained that to me, that's sort of when that part of it clicked. So,
Hmm.
so what next? I mean, you get how was your 4? Like, tell us just briefly about that. Was that a challenge for you? Because like when I was done mine, it was like I didn't feel better right away. I felt worse for a while after I wrote that out.
Yeah. Step 4 was heavy. It was also a lot of work.
Hmm.
I tried to be as complete as I could be. I would write until my hand was cramped. There was just so much out there, and like, I did an inventory of all my fears, of all my resentments, of all the people I've hurt, like everything like that. I put everything I could think of on paper, and it was very heavy.
Hmm.
I remember a few times having to stop while I was working on it just because I just felt like a giant piece of shit. Um, and looking at all, like, there's so much dishonesty and so much manipulation and stuff like that that I've done to so many people, and so many resentments that like when I finally looked at my part in my resentments, a lot of my resentments had to do with me getting all, insulted by somebody reacting to my shitty behavior.
Hmm.
So it was enlightening, but I definitely felt worse after doing my step 4. It was a very heavy step.
Yeah.
Um, but step 5 came around, and going through my step 5 was so freeing. I just remember feeling like a huge weight had been lifted after I went through my step 5.
How
I
long did
put
it
down a
take?
lot of the rocks I've been carrying.
How
It
long
took
did your
about
5
five
take?
hours.
Yeah.
About 5 hours, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's I've heard of them taking way longer. I've heard of them taking less time too, but like yeah, I talked for 5 hours straight. It was crazy, and I felt through a lot of the things in my life that I have never felt through before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was such a freeing experience. I really recommend to anyone in recovery, like get your step 4 and 5 done. It's going to make such a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm so grateful I did it.
So where are you at now? Tell us a little bit about what's your journey look like these days?
Um, well, I'm not quite done my first set of steps. I'm working on step 8 right now.
Mhm.
I'm stalled a little bit. That was a hard one for me. Not only is it tough to like, look at all of the people I've harmed, but like the becoming willing to make amends, like there's a few that I'm just like, I don't want to make amends with this person. So
Yeah,
that's something I'm also working through.
yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I plan on staying in Estevan for now. And I do eventually want to go back and finish my PhD. For now, though, I just got a job working housekeeping at the hospital here in
Hmm.
town. Um, I want to start at the bottom. I need to humble myself. I don't need to go into something that's going to inflate my ego right away. I just I need to start contributing to society, and that's going to be a really important thing for me.
Hmm.
Um, I got the job back in February, and I've been waiting for a certified criminal record check to come in from the RCMP for about 4 months, and it finally came in 2 weeks ago. So, I mean,
Hmm.
there was 2 weeks or 4 months of a lot of stress and anxiety and making up stories in my own head, but it's in finally. So that's a real big relief for sure.
Awesome. We've got a comment coming in here. Is it Diane? I always pronounce it
Hmm.
wrong. Diane. Diane, thank you for the comment. Diane says, as Jocelyn's mom, this is a family disease. Joss's commitment to her recovery has inspired us all to look deep and recognize how we can improve our lives. This is a journey. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for being part of the conversation.
Thanks, Mom. And it's
Yeah.
true. I
Yeah.
mean, we really do affect our whole families with our disease.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's lots of toxicity and codependency and enabling and all that stuff that you've really got to address.
There was a time where I couldn't
But I'm,
understand where the people that cared about me were so angry because I was only hurting myself after all. Like, why is everybody
oh
so.
man,
Did you ever tell yourself that? Because
that
that was like one of the biggest lies I ever believed.
all the time, all the
Hmm.
time. Why are they so angry? I'm only hurting myself. Not
Hmm. Knowing
realizing,
that you're
like,
hurting yourself,
no,
saying that is a justification.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, that's somehow a good way to rationalize that. I don't
Hmm.
know, but yeah, I did tell myself that all the time. Like, they shouldn't be hurt. I'm just harming myself, not like thinking I'm forcing my family to watch me slowly kill myself, and
Hmm.
that probably really hurts for them.
Yeah. Well, we've got another comment here from Alyssa. Elisa. I'm the worst with names. Like I always say names wrong. I'm sorry, Elisa.
Oh, Alyssa, my cousin.
Alyssa.
Hi,
Thank you,
Alyssa.
Alyssa, for being here today. Alyssa says, "Hey, Joss, I am so proud of you. You have come a long way since I seen you last. Well done. Keep it up."
Aw, thanks, Alyssa. That's awesome.
And I think that's all we've got here
Yeah.
for comments. Um, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Uh, well, I mean, I really appreciate having the opportunity to come on here and share my story today, and I just want to thank you. This has been really fun.
Awesome. Okay. Well, with that, um, I would like to thank you for coming and sharing your experience and hope with our community today. And we will let you go. Take care, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
There is power in numbers. If you would like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our Facebook page and follow us on Instagram. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Find us on all audio podcast platforms. Let us come together with our lived and living experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, and to show the world that the lie is dead. We can recover. There is a safer way, and we're here to show you how. If you would like to see everything we have to offer, visit www.hardknockstalks.com. Take care, everyone.